I want to kick things off and talk about the digital event that we are hosting today, From the Booth to the Bank, how RevOps can help drive event ROI. We have Zach Barney, who is the CEO and co-founder over at Mobly, to help us guide us through that discussion today. Zach, I'm going to turn it over to you to get us started on the content and add it to that personal and professional introduction. But I also want you, as you do that, to drop in some information. This is non-work related. We kind of hit on this in our kind of prep right before we were talking about the 4th of July. And so as you kind of tell us a little bit more about yourself, we just got through the 4th of July. So tell us about your favorite cookout or grill out item. What's a must-have 4th of July barbecue for you and your cul-de-sac party that you were just telling about? Then we can get into the field marketing and how RevOps can drive ROI as part of the discussion today.
Barbecue is my love language, Matt. So
yeah,
it led me
barbecue,
right in.
barbecue, and death to badge scanning. Those are the two things.
How's my audio? Do I sound okay?
Yeah, you sound good to me.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Zach Barney. As Matt said, I am co-founder and CEO of Mobly. We are based in Lehi, Utah, which is kind of the central hub of all of the tech going on in Utah. A little fun fact is my co-founder, Chris, and I grew up together in Lehi. When we were in high school, Lehi was a little farming community where people would make fun of us and ask if we rode our horses to school. And now one of Adobe's largest campuses was right across the street from us. It's been fun to witness the change here over the years. My wife, Erica, and I just celebrated our 16th anniversary, spent 2 weeks in Europe, spending time in Germany, Switzerland, and Liechtenstein. I was there during the co-op event in Berlin, but I was not on that side of the country. So I wasn't able to attend, sad I missed it. In terms of my favorite must-have barbecue, I love smoking meats. We had a barbecue at my in-laws over the 4th, and they provided the main course. They asked if I would provide a side dish, and I did smoked mac and cheese, which was a hit. I grossly overestimated how much I would need. So I made enough for quote unquote 32 people. I made way too much. And I think we're barely finishing off the leftovers right now.
Yeah, that sounds delicious. I feel like mac and cheese, it's like a good leftover. You know, like you've got some
Great
things
leftover,
where,
especially if it's like a good homemade
Yeah.
smoked one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You put that thing back in the oven, right? It can get a little crispy. The cheese gets crispy. I don't know if anyone disagrees with me. We don't need to get into disagreement over proper leftovers.
We can fight about that later.
Great choice. Maybe drop that recipe to the folks at some point, Zach. But we can move on now from mac and cheese, 4th of July celebrations, and into the topic of the day. So why don't you go ahead, pull up any slides, content that you want to share and walk us through and get us rolling. And as you're doing that, please drop in any questions, any feedback, anything that's on your mind as we go through this. Drop it into the chat today as we go along, because we're going to be answering those questions as we go.
Sounds great. Since I'm sharing my screen full screen now, Matt, you definitely need to be the one that monitors the chat. Yep. I want to make sure that I'm following the slides and not distracting myself, but I want this to be an engaging conversation. So yeah, questions, comments, whatever, please don't save them till the end. Like I mentioned, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Mobly. The best way to describe Mobly is we are the system of record for your in-person events. Think HubSpot or Marketo for your face-to-face engagements. Now, this webinar is not going to be a sales pitch on Mobly, but what it will be a sales pitch on is selling you on the problem of that Mobly solves, and the fact that you should be solving it from a revenue operations perspective. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. I want to start out with a poll. Matt's going to pull up an actual poll that we'd love your participation in. What percentage of your marketing budget goes to events?
Yeah, so as we're doing this poll, Zach, I'm curious because I'm sure you've asked this question before. I think you also have some data that you'll show us here in a little bit. What do you think the range will be of people here? And then I'm sure that'll lead into some of the stuff we're going to share once we close the poll.
I am not sure what the range of people here will be. I would say companies that have revenue operations as an actual role within their organization tend to be a little bit more events heavy and sophisticated with how they operate their go-to-market. I will tell you exactly what the industry average breakdown is, and this is coming from Deloitte's most recent CMO survey.
And I'll share the results here.
Wow, it's actually higher than I thought. That's great. Everybody's doing at least a portion. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it looks like most folks in that more than 30% sort of bucket. And I'm curious, and I'm sure you'll get into this as you talk through some of the stuff on this slide and as we go throughout, but obviously percentage of your marketing spend. I'm curious how people would answer this question. What percentage of your pipeline is generated from in-person events, and whether or not there's any alignment on that, but I'll let you get into the things you can tell us on the slide.
We'll definitely chat about that because the answer most people would give you if they were being honest is I have no idea. That's why we exist, because it's hard. If you look at this graph, this is coming straight from Deloitte's semi-annual CMO survey, but in-person events that comprises of both first party and third party eats up roughly 20% of all marketing spend, which is a lot. If you think about the digital side, you've got your marketing automation platforms like HubSpot and Marketo that handle your SEO, your content, your landing pages. You've got all of these platforms for the creative side of things. And then event marketers are still stuck in the Stone Ages. They're using spreadsheets, pen and paper, business cards, and duct tape. It's a mess. There's a ton of manual work if you are hell-bent on doing a good job and getting the ROI that you should be getting from your events, or you give up on it because it's so hard and end up saying, we had to go to that event because it was a branding play. We had to be there for our customers, and just use that as a cop-out because it's too hard. Mm-hmm. And that's not necessarily the CMO's fault, the RevOps fault. It's freaking hard when you go to 20 events a year, 30 events a year, and each event has their own bespoke process for lead capture. And since you're using it on a one-off basis, not integrating it with anything, it's just manual. It's hard work and it sucks. To put this into perspective, the average B2B company spends roughly 10% of their entire revenue on marketing. So 20% of 10%, a $100 million company is going to spend $2 million a year on in-person events. That's an insanely large spend, in the tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars when you add in all of the B2B companies in the US and Canada, still using bespoke processes, maybe borrowing your company's Monday or Asana account to manage the project and running a whole bunch of manual reports in your CRM. So because it's such a fragmented process, this is what typical event follow-up looks like. 30, 40 times a year, you buy an event-specific lead retrieval after you spend a bunch of money on the sponsorship. Then you have to do a know before you go meeting and train your team on this specific software for this specific 2-day event. Then you actually go to the event, you scan badges. At the end of the event, sometimes days later, depending on how good the technology is, you download the CSV file. And because that CSV file is filled with data that people registered with, you're stuck with a lot of burner accounts, typos, duplicates, and missing information. So then you have to enrich the data. After enriching the data, you upload it to your CRM, you deduplicate it and match it against your existing content database, and finally assign it to reps for them to follow up. That's a lot. I'm tired just going through those.
I can definitely confirm this process. So we just held a couple of our own conferences, RevOps AF. We did our US event in New Orleans in May. We did our EMEA event in Berlin in June. And one of the things we did, we had a bunch of sponsors, they had some physical presence, and we had lead retrieval as part of the process. And so it was one of those things for us as the event manager trying to provide something to our sponsors. We looked at all this documentation. The first year we did all this stuff, we were like, hey, sponsors, here's a bunch of stuff. Go forth and do your thing. Well, they all had problems, right? People don't look at the training materials that you provide them. They kind of try to do things on the fly. And then the day of, if you're a sponsor, you wind up with all of these challenges, right? And then Afterwards, you're left with this export from the app, get it into your CRM. Now, we've gotten better and we have done some things with connecting to our CRM and using the source of record there. And those are the data points we provide to sponsors when people opt in, but it's still not a great process. And yeah, there's errors, it's time consuming. And actually, I think you're probably going to tell us how much time this process typically takes, right?
Yep. 11 days is the average.
Yeah.
And the bigger the company, the more sophisticated they are, the longer it takes. We have some Fortune 100 customers, and before coming to Mobly, it was taking them 3 to 4 weeks, simply because they have a process. They want to make sure that the data meets all of the data criteria in their CRM, as it should, but they can't do it efficiently. So they err on the side of doing it right and sacrifice speed, which unfortunately, as a recovering VP of sales, I know that slowness kills deals. I'm sure most of us are familiar with the famous Harvard Business Review report on every 5 minutes you wait to follow up with a lead, the propensity to engage goes down significantly. And so, like, why wouldn't that be the same case with somebody you meet in person? They're going to be at their very hottest when you're having a face-to-face conversation with them. Why are we okay with waiting nearly 2 weeks to say, hey, thanks for meeting us at the booth? Rather than let's book something now, let's get something on the calendar. Let me send you this piece of content, this case study, this recorded demo right now, and help me stand out from the 50 other exhibitors that are trying to compete for your attention.
One question on the speed to lead thing. Back in the day when I was doing sales and business development, I remember I was in healthcare. We were at HIMSS, a massive healthcare conference in Orlando. We collected a bunch of business cards. On the plane ride back, I was starting to draft some emails, send people some outreach. And one of the senior people that I was with was like, let's wait a little bit because after these events, people get inundated and exhausted, quote unquote, hungover, right? Like all these things. We compare that to a digital interaction. I have a story on this as well. Last week, I submitted a demo request for a particular product. I had to submit a form. I couldn't book time. I have yet to get an email or a response back from these people. So now I'm like, I got to go out and find something else. But in that case, it was a digital interaction. I submitted a digital form. And so we know speed to lead is very important. In-person events, different interactions. Is there a difference on this notion of speed to lead, given the face-to-face involvement being a different type of interaction than the digital interaction that occurs over a computer screen?
I've got a couple of points to answer that. I would say number one, keep in mind the competition for that person's attention. Anybody that says we should wait because they're going to be inundated, it's a cop-out. There's no actual evidence that states that it's better to wait. All you're doing is a disservice. But the manner of which you follow up needs to be respectful and cognizant of what's going on in their life. They're going to be busy. They're going to be tired. They're going to be hungover. They're going to come back to a full inbox. So maybe don't push them for a demo over email 2 days after the event. Instead, during the event, while they're still there, invite them to dinner, coffee, happy hour, whatever. Invite them to come back, ask them for their mailing address so you can send them a custom piece of swag, a thank you for taking the time, and so forth. Do that as soon as you possibly can, because you want to push people through the funnel for everybody's sake. It's better for them, so that if your solution is actually doing what you say it's going to do and providing real value to them, it's better that you get in front of it and actually start having those conversations versus getting lost in the noise. If they aren't a super hot lead, if they just wanted a free t-shirt, spin the wheel for a chance to win $1,000 or whatever, that context is so incredibly important. Those are people that you need to treat more like a nurture type lead, where you're not aggressively following up with them like they were jumping up and down begging for a demo, because they weren't, and then you're just kind of turning them off.
Yep.
So there are 3 pillars that we practice on the revenue operations side in order to maximize your event ROI. I want to talk about them one by one, and then we'll go through a little bit of an audit, self-reflection time, so that you can figure out how your company is actually doing. I'm not going to ask for answers, so you can be honest here and not feel embarrassed. We'll wrap it up with a couple of ending thoughts. That sound good, Matt?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Number 1 pillar is capturing context. So similar to the question that you just asked about event follow-up, context matters. It's not going to be good for you if your team scans 500 leads at an event and you treat them all the same way. Similar to how every inbound lead is going to have a little bit of a different situation. If you just blanket automate and send a thanks for stopping by our booth email to every single lead, then you're going to miss out on the opportunity to add context to your outreach and be more personal and tailored to them. The only way your sales team can do that is if you enable them to capture that context in the moment of conversation. This is what you'll typically get when you scan a lead using a third-party badge scanner at an event. You get their name, their title, their company, their email. You also might know who scanned them and at what time. But what you should really aim for is finding a way to capture their interest level. What products that you sell are they interested in? How was their engagement with you? We call those activations in the event world. If I'm at HubSpot inbound and I have a 20 by 20 booth, you can sure as hell bet that we're not just doing a 20 by 20 booth. We have several things going on within that booth, maybe a demo station, maybe we have the swag store, maybe we have a magician doing card tricks. So the people that are engaging with those different things have a different level of interest and context. You might be hosting a happy hour. You might take a few leads out for dinner one night. Understanding what their interaction with you was versus they were scanned at the event is super important and can help your team follow up with a more custom tailored engagement. And it's also important to just let people free text and throw in their conversation notes. If you're bare bones and don't have budget to spend on something like Mobly, like use Slack, snap a photo of a badge, throw it into a shared Slack channel and speak in your notes to Slack so that it's going to create manual work for you, but at least you'll have context and you won't lose it on the back of a business card when your pants go through the wash next week. Find a way to capture the context. That's incredibly important. That helps maximize the engagement and thus maximize the ROI from a revenue operations perspective.
Zach, just the one thing I like, because Vivian actually just asked as you were mentioning that, how can you capture context easily? I think you just answered that with the idea of, obviously there's products like Mobly that can help with that. You can do this stuff manually via a photo that you can snap along with some sort of voice note in Slack. Also keep in mind, right, again, like the latter manual work, but with AI, that unstructured, like written free text data can now be more easily changed into structured data. Another reason why capturing that context up front, even if it's a little rough, is so critically important because it's going to allow you to do all these other things you're going to talk about so much better and more effectively.
Totally agree. This is obviously something we focus on with our product at Mobly. We allow our customers to create tags which align to pick list values in their CRM. We use things like heat score, event volume, current CRM, current marketing automation platform, and then we just have our common pick list values that the rep can tap on, plus a free text for them to type or speak into. If you're on a shoestring budget, set the expectation with the team that this is what they need to do, and then enable them to do it. Like in whatever way, shape, or form, if they understand the value of it and you provide some suggestions on ways to make it happen, then like an SDR who's following up with these leads is going to eat up that context. They'll be able to custom tailor their follow-up much better, with a simple Slack note, like, hey, I met this person here. This is what they're interested in. They're not going to be the buyer. It's so helpful. The rep will treat the lead with a lot more of a white glove approach if they have that context.
Just one last question, Zach, as we move on to the next one. Maya was asking, for capturing context, do you recommend kind of doing it immediately, so step aside after the conversation at the booth, or try to do these more in bulk at the end of the day or maybe at certain points of the day?
Depends on the event. If you're at Dreamforce and you're having 1,000 conversations, I can guarantee you don't remember the context at the end of the day. So it's important to have that discipline. You scan their badge, you put your phone away, you have the conversation. As soon as they walk away, pull up your phone, tap the mic, and speak your notes in there so you don't forget. We're humans. We're not perfect beings, which is why AI is making so many strides on the more manual and task-oriented work on the sales side of things. AI doesn't make as many mistakes when it comes to consistent follow-up. They don't forget to email. They don't forget to to send somebody a text message. So yeah, I would say if it's a smaller event where you're having more intimate conversations, it's fine to wait. Ideally, you're doing it as fast as possible.
Yep, I agree. Even if it's one person after the other throughout the whole day, that's a good problem to have. Take 30 seconds to breathe, get that voice note into your phone, and then move on. I think that's probably the best practice.
Yep. All right, second pillar is speed to lead. We talked about 11 days being the average. It's incredibly unacceptable. People don't remember you. I am going to share a story. A previous company I worked at, automotive software growth equity firm. We owned 17, 18 different portfolio companies, all selling to Doug's Garage and Joe's Automotive. There was one particular event. It was a smaller, more intimate event, roughly the same size as RevOps AF, 300-500 people. And we had consistently taken a few of our portcos there every single year and just absolutely dominated that event. We had a very tight relationship with most of the attendees. We had a good customer base. People expected to see us there. They had these Olympic Games that were a big tradition where all of the attendees, including sponsors, would split up into teams and do all of these beach games. Our teams were the ones that everybody wanted to be a part of because we were so fun and engaged. It was awesome. We got a new person running our marketing and events onto the company. She wanted to be a little bit more formulaic in their approach and getting the data into the CRM, which again is not a bad thing in and of itself. Data is important and consistency is important, but it took her 31 days for my sales team to get their leads back. And we were explicitly told that we cannot follow up until they are in the CRM and assigned properly so that we have the right data. We went from closing 5 to 6 deals every time we went to that event to closing absolutely 0. And it was not a cheap event. It was in Puerto Rico that year. Sending several people to Puerto Rico and getting nothing out of it and calling all of our leads a month later to hear them say, oh, I re-upped with my current provider. Why did you guys take so long? Or I don't remember you, and so forth. Like, it's so frustrating. And that was actually the straw that broke the camel's back for me, that pushed me over the edge to start Mobly. I can't believe this hasn't been solved yet. I'm going to go do it. So faster handoff is going to equal more meetings, going to equal more pipeline, and it's going to equal true ROI. If you're not even following up with people for a month, there is no way in hell you can actually attribute revenue to that event accurately and in a timely manner to where you can actually justify the spend on that event. Does anybody have any questions or comments on this section before we jump to the next one?
No, there's nothing else in the chat. Puerto Rico is awesome, though. I would love to be able to go to a trade show or something work-related there.
Cool spot.
Yeah, you were talking before about the average time being 11 days and that story being 31 days. I barely remember what I did this morning. I'm not going to remember someone I met at a trade show 31, 32 days ago. That's old news.
Nope. Number 3, remove roadblocks. This is going to be the sore spot for all of you RevOps all-stars here because of the importance of data hygiene and cleanliness to get accurate reporting and attribution. One area where you should be flexible and allow people to color outside of the lines is with events, because they don't have the time to sit down and input everything that you would typically require to convert a lead to an opportunity, to send a contract, and allow them to make it as easy as possible on your buyers, especially if you're a transactional type sale that can sell deals on the trade show floor. Don't require them to create the lead, convert it to an opportunity, get a mailing address, and all of this other stuff before they're allowed to take somebody's credit card. Be flexible on that. I shared a poor experience from that last company. I'm going to share a great experience from that last company. There was another event that we went to, and we had a brand new head of revenue operations who was very aligned with sales on the importance of getting revenue from this event. Most of our portcos were very transactional, a couple $100 a month type solutions. So he said, guys, let's create our 4 most common contracts in DocuSign, have them preloaded with a couple of checkboxes that they can fill out for the product they are selecting, and have the reps pull it up on an iPad, allow people to sign right then and there without touching the CRM. And my team back at the office will do all of the work of creating the lead, of converting, attaching the contract to it so that you guys don't have to worry about that headache while you're face to face with somebody. You can be present, you can be there for them and have more conversations, and we'll take that legwork off of you. Obviously, that was a little bit scary because we didn't want to lose a contract somewhere and not have any record of it, but we ended up closing literally hundreds of deals across our 18 portfolio companies at that event because of the ease of doing business with us. So a couple of examples of things that you can do is, number one, allow a contract to be signed without an opportunity, go back and create it later. Allow an opportunity creation without a billing address. Remove any qualification criteria, remove stages, just let them move it and come back to it. You might want to consider, especially if you have a large TAM and aren't working with a handful of large enterprise named accounts, being a little bit more flexible on territories and account assignments and providing benefit for the people that are on the floor. Now, this is a case-by-case basis. Some companies are strict and there's no getting around that. But from a buyer's perspective, imagine I'm going to buy a simple solution that is easy to implement. I'm at a conference and I meet somebody selling the exact product I need. We schedule everything, and the next week, somebody else shows up on the call, and I've never met them. It's not as smooth of an experience for me as a buyer versus this is the person I hung out with at the happy hour. We chatted for a half hour at the booth. They did a brief demo. Why can't I just work with them? So again, that's a larger conversation with your leadership, but something to consider as a way to remove roadblocks and flex a little bit on the rules. So those are your three pillars here. Capture context, speed to lead, and remove roadblocks is going to make you your revenue team's best friend when it comes to events. I'm going to pause there.
So there's a couple of questions. One is from Sarah. It sounds like they leverage HubSpot and Salesforce. So my guess is maybe HubSpot for marketing automation, Salesforce for CRM. She's wondering about recommendations for pushing scan leads to HubSpot first versus Salesforce, or vice versa. It sounds like she is sending enriched scans into HubSpot, and then there's a manual step in the middle where a separate spreadsheet gets created with a condensed version of true MQLs that gets pushed into Salesforce. Process-wise, any thoughts or recommendations for someone like Sarah on best practices?
My biggest stamp of approval, Sarah, is to tell you that we do the exact same thing with HubSpot as our marketing automation and Salesforce as our CRM. I like the idea of going to HubSpot first and letting it talk to Salesforce. Definitely don't try to push to both. Pick one or the other. And if your team has a strong opinion on one, I don't think it's the end of the world to go to Salesforce versus HubSpot first, as long as Salesforce talks back to it. The one thing that gives me pause is that second piece where you have a separate spreadsheet for the hotter leads. My question is, why not push them all to HubSpot and then have some workflows based on leads automatically get converted and sent right to the account executive? You can do a lot of automation there. Jesse from my team, he's on this webinar. I'm sure he's happy to help out and answer any questions on how we would do that ourselves and give you some ideas. The RevOps co-op community, that Slack group is phenomenal and can provide a lot of good suggestions to make that easier so you're not having to do two workflows depending on the hotness of the lead.
Yeah, it makes sense.
All right, so in getting started, this is what I would recommend that you do. If you're thinking, this is giving me something to think about, I think we can get a little bit better. The first thing to do is understand where you're at. A few questions that I would recommend doing in your process audit is, number one, what is our current speed to lead? And you don't audit this by asking your marketing team or your sales team. You actually have to go track this. And it's not when the lead was created in Salesforce or HubSpot. Track when they were actually scanned at an event and when the first activity was. Look at that and see what your actual speed to lead is. For most of you, it will shock you how slow you are. It will shock you. Number two is revenue attribution. Are we actually good at tracking revenue from our events? I am of the belief that there should never be one single source of lead source. I don't care about who was the first touch or who was the last touch. I care about who was involved from start to finish. And if events are contributing to revenue, then they need to show that they are contributing to revenue, even if it's a late stage opportunity that stops by the booth, but they help move them forward in the pipeline. Can you track that? Do you have a way to track what the revenue influence was from your events? Be honest with yourself. Thirdly, figure out how much time, wasted effort on manual export, import, enrichment, training for third-party apps that you use one time is spent. So like a good rule of thumb is think about for each event, you're probably spending 6 to 8 hours of either revenue or market development work, manually working on the leads, and then additional time training the team. If you have 5 people going to an event and you spend an hour training them on whatever lead retrieval app they're using, that adds up when it comes to lost opportunity cost that a salespeople could be spending actually selling deals. So do an audit there. So that's number 1, do your audit. Number 2, after doing the audit, identify where we can improve. And number 3, align your team. You know this, from a revenue operations perspective, you tend to be the most forward-thinking, technology-driven person within your go-to-market organization. You cannot implement a more efficient process for your events to track ROI and improve it unless your events team and your marketing leadership are fully aligned with you and understand the value of putting a more defined process in place. If your sales team doesn't understand what is in it for them, they won't do it. They will take it as RevOps or marketing shoving some new process down my throat that's preventing me from selling deals. So get their alignment and help them see this is going to increase our speed to lead. This is going to increase our lead conversion rate by 10%, by 20%, which means more money in your pocket. In the case of Mobly, one thing we always tell our customers is tell your sales team that they have to learn one tool instead of 50 tools throughout the course of the year, and they'll have a record of everything they are doing so that their boss will be off their back asking what the status of that lead is. We actually reduce the work of the sales team by putting a tiny bit of work up front with them. So make sure that they're aligned. If you need ideas, reach out to me, reach out to somebody on my team. We're happy to help strategize and figure out whether or not that involves Mobly. Second poll, right before we wrap up, do you see your event budget changing in 2026? So in pitching Mobly and doing fundraising, one question that a lot of investors ask us is, are events going away? Are we getting more digital? I always respond with, no, absolutely not. In fact, event marketing budget is increasing by roughly 10% year over year since people realized how much they missed face-to-face interaction during the pandemic. And also with a little bit of fatigue with AI. I love AI. We use AI. I'm a very big supporter of AI. But at some point, in order to differentiate yourself, if you can be face-to-face with somebody, it provides a huge advantage. So overall, as far as the industry goes, event budgets are increasing. But I'm curious to see within this group if that holds true or if it's completely different. We're looking at it in result.
Yeah, and I'll end this poll in a little bit. Just some thoughts on that last slide you had up, Zach, specifically the first step around audit. The things you called out there, like measuring your speed to lead, measuring influence, just for folks out there, do those things. Keep in mind they're going to be probably manual, a little bit painful, right? It's not like you're going to be able to probably just export some data and do a formula, right? This may involve you literally typing data into rows in a spreadsheet, doing some copy and paste. So one, keep in mind, that's a step you're going to have to do. Also keep in mind, like, get enough data to get to the, I'll say, like, the right answer. It doesn't mean you need to put in 100% of leads from every in-person event over the last 12 months, which could be thousands of records, right? Just get enough in there so that you can, like maybe coverage from a couple of different events that occurred over different times of the year, right? Get a good mix, and then like get enough there that you're not going to go to like someone with your findings and they're going to be like, there's 5 rows of data here. What do you mean? You think that's like, don't do that, right? But get enough in there to feel comfortable and like you're directionally there, but it doesn't mean you need to do 100%. This is the manual work you need as step 1. You can figure out how to automate that later after you identify gaps and align your team. Just keep in mind that unfortunately, while I wish you could wave a magic AI wand, right? Like we can't create metadata out of nowhere. You might find you don't have some of the data necessary, or maybe it's a little messy. Just keep that in mind. I'm going to end the poll now so we can share some results. To add on to what you were saying, Zach, when it comes to event budgets changing. I've seen this a lot this year with RevOps Co-op. We've been doing a lot more in-person events, not just conferences and kind of larger group stuff, but we've been doing, happy hour events. We've been
Yeah.
doing small group dinner events. Like I'm in Santa Monica this week because we're doing a dinner event here. We're going to be doing a dinner event in New York in a couple of weeks. We do happy hours in San Francisco, Austin, Chicago, kind of all over the place. And that stuff has really picked up a lot as we've gotten started this year. It's going to grow for the reasons you mentioned. I think with all this AI, it's easier to put stuff out there online now. So things get noisy, people start to tune things out. We are very far removed now from the pandemic, whether it's pent up demand, pent up energy, this idea of like, face to face is kind of normal stuff, but you still have a lot of people either working hybrid or from home. That's left over from the pandemic. And so for all those reasons, I think people like that, right? They want to get out, they want to meet their peers, they want to network. And I think, for that reason, like I see in-person stuff continuing to grow this year and into the future.
One additional thought there. Thank you for that, Matt. So given that we work very heavily with marketers and field marketers, a couple of things to note. This should not be the case, but statistically, an event marketer tends to be a little bit more junior in their career and not have the experience to make a good business case and to show why events should be a bigger thing, why they should increase their spend. So if you feel after doing an audit that your team should be doubling down on events, make a couple changes, or maybe you're not giving it the credit it deserves, then you need to partner with them and help create the business case with numbers. Help them make the business case. If they go to the CFO and say, hey, I need another 100 grand for 3 more events, and the CFO says, okay, but what are we going to get out of that? Of course, they're not going to get it. Everything's being scrutinized on a spend perspective right now. So that's a benefit that you can provide in partnering with your marketing team is help them with that data and don't rely on them to do the selling if the case is there to be made for you doing more and better on your events.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
One question on the attribution side. I agree with what you mentioned before. If we think about the buying process right now, nothing is linear. There's typically a lot of different touch points involved. And also typically people's decision or readiness to buy is driven by timing, not necessarily driven by something that I'll say like us as people can do. And again, it's typically not a first touch or a last touch that's going to make or break things. It's going to be the series of things that you do. So I agree completely on looking at the influence piece of in-person events. But do you have any recommendations or feedback for people who may be at organizations that have a very strict or rigid, but a very specific way of looking at attribution and how they can communicate the value of in-person events if that's the world that they live in?
Yeah, it's a great question. Number one, you have to start tracking data regardless and doing it better in order to make the case. We have a couple of calculators that we've built, and one of them allows you to add a multiple factor onto influence versus source. If you pipe in your average lead volume, if you pipe in your conversion rate, average deal size, and win rate, that'll get you your lead sourcing ROI. That's a pretty easy thing to calculate. If you also say, you know what, we're meeting a bunch of our customers there and we need to show ROI from our sourcing, but I don't want to discount the fact that we're influencing other revenue, then you can create a separate column and say, maybe it gets 50% or 25% of the weight of a source lead. You can put that in a separate column and at least show it. I think it's important to show, hey, we're not only are we driving a 4x ROI in pure net new revenue, but we're also influencing $1 million a year, interacting with people that we otherwise wouldn't be interacting with as much as we are, that are buying from us. And here's some examples. No, I'm not claiming that we sourced this $1 million deal, but we met them at Inbound. We met them at RevOps and at Dreamforce and had dinner with them twice. If you don't think that's influencing it, then you're up in the night. I would recommend that and show that you're taking into account that that you don't give it an equal weight, but you want to give it some weight, and most people will be reasonable enough with you I recognize that a lot of those metrics and expectations come from the top, whether it's the CEO or the board. And sometimes you have to do a little education to help them understand what an event's for. The worst thing you can do is say, again, this is a branding play and we have to be there or somebody else is going to take our spot. That doesn't fly. So don't err on that side and get as contextual as you can with every single lead.
Yeah. Even hearing about the customer side of things you were talking about, there's a lot we can take from the new business side and apply there. If you have an existing customer base, if you have products you've sold to them and now they're on renewals, are things you need to do to get them to sign again. I hope you have renewal opportunities somewhere in your CRM in the same way you would have new business opportunities. And so to go back to that example you gave before, if this interaction at this particular event has happened after that opportunity has already been created, or maybe it's later stage, theoretically, those are just two opportunities in separate pipelines or two different opportunity types. You can still show those, like you said, separated. So you can indicate how much pipeline influence we've had on deals that are already in pipeline.
Right.
Maybe you can show how much, we can call it influence, but influence you've had over deals that have been created post-event with those people that have showed up. And then also, here's how much impact we've had on our renewal pipeline or dollars up for renewal. Because you could say, oh, this is just a branding play. This is a way for us to shake hands and get in front of our customers. If you can say, oh, this is a way for us to interact with $1 million that we have coming up for renewal over the next 12 months.
It's increasing
Different
our
message,
NRR.
different story. Exactly. So frame it in the way that means the most to those decision makers, those executives, and you'll get over the hump real fast.
Lovely. Happy to take questions. I know we have just a couple more minutes. So Matt, I'll let you drive the Q&A or anything else that you want to add before we let everybody go.
Yeah, I'm just doing one last check on some of the questions that are in the chat and the Q&A that we have here. And it looks like we've got to all the questions. I'll do a little bit of wrap up now. If you have, we're hair twins. Aaron.
Thanks.
Oh, that
Thanks,
came from Aaron. I was like, who said that? Zach and I are hair twins. I also learned that we have wedding anniversaries that are very close. Zach just celebrated his 16-year wedding anniversary. I have my 16-year wedding anniversary with my wife coming up in August. I guess we both have beards. There's probably a lot more that we have in common as well, Zach. What I will say to people as we're getting wrapped up here, drop anything you have on your mind in the chat. We'll make sure to answer them. Otherwise, just keep in mind, as you exit the Zoom today, you will be prompted with a 2-question survey asking for feedback on the session. Please fill that out. It'll take you a couple seconds. We value all of that and take it all very seriously so we can make our digital events better in the future. If you haven't yet, go check out some of those calculators that Zach mentioned. They've got a bunch of resources, other things available on your website that can be super helpful for you. Check out RevOpsCoop.com. Join the community if you're not already a member. We have 17,000 plus members across the community. All of our digital events get recorded. Those are available to anybody on our website. We have courses, education, a lot of different ways that y'all can get involved. But with that, Zach, I don't see any other questions. So I just want to say thank you for dropping some knowledge on the crew today. This was super helpful, super informative, and I know I got a lot out of it. I think everybody did as well. I will let you run, Zach. I will let all of our attendees run as well. Thank you all for being here. And that's all I've got for you. See you at the next one. Take care, everybody.
Appreciate y'all. See ya.
Peace.